This seminar is on age group swimming progression with Coach Sanders. He's a PhD and a wonderful presenter. He joins us from a training camp in Thailand, but he coaches regularly in Newcastle in Australia, grew up in the Netherlands.
Coach Sander had been helping us for quite some time already, many times. Yeah, the floor is yours, Coach Sander.
Thanks, Dennis. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for allowing me the time to talk. First of all, I want to send out my thoughts and prayers to the people of the Philippines with the current typhoon and the backlash of the typhoon. I hope everyone is safe and all right in that country. Dennis, I hope that you are safe. I was asked to talk a bit about swimming age group progression. Let's get right into it. Add my information. Bit of my swimming background. Dennis already said so just before. I used to represent the Netherlands as a backstroker back in the day. And afterwards, I've coached in different high performance centers in both the Netherlands, Germany, and in Australia. At the moment in Newcastle, I have a background in sports science, and I also do a little bit of coach mentoring and consultancy on the side. Today, we're talking about age group progression. We think about age group progression. Usually, we start our swimming career as a competitive swimmer around the age of 8. And it takes a while to get to the senior level, and a lot of athletes usually get there when they're about 18 years of age. So within that 10 years, there is an important aspect of a swimming career, which I'd like to give at least my ideas about how that should be shaped. While doing that, we're going to have a look at long-term athlete development, which is the term that usually gives us a good direction, and the ideas that gives us good direction for our age group progression. Then I'll discuss the goals of progression. We'll look at how training should be focused, or what training can be focused on, and then continue with the longitudinal build-up of set training. So how can you progress from that 7 to 8 years gradually over the years to get to a good performance or open level. I'll give quite a bit of examples, both of training sets that I would recommend for different forms of training. And I'll also give 2 examples of clubs that I've worked with in Australia that, in my opinion, run quite a good age group progression. And I'll show you how that is built up. To start off, we're going to go into the long-term athlete development. This is a definition that's been written around by Balyi and his colleagues. It's a pretty good book about long-term athlete development. You can find that online and buy it via Human Kinetics. What I like to highlight are the different words that I've put in bold. Age group progression is not just a static thing. It continues over time. So we're looking at a stage by stage approach. And it's not just for that elite athlete that reaches an open medal at the Olympic stage or world championships or anything like that. And we're looking at every single child, youth, and adult in the end that comes in through the door and that wants to do something that has to do with swimming. And when we're looking at swimming, we're looking at something that will continue for a long time. We don't want to have people just come in and then think, oh, this is not for me, and then walk out. That is one, not very beneficial for the health. 2, also not very beneficial for your business, because the more people you have in your business, the better your business will work. So we're looking at something that they can do lifelong, where people can come back to, that helps their health, that creates physical activity. And only if they are talented, then we worry about performance. And if they have the drive to do that, then we look at performance. First of all, and really in the center of things, should be that lifelong health enhancing physical activity. We want to keep people in the sport. we want to make sure that they stay healthy, keep active, and keep doing that swimming for the rest of their life, because that's where swimming is really well suited. One of the graphs that I've added is a couple of those stages that people go through. You have the physical literacy, which is the starting stage, the fundamental skills of how people work and how they move through the sport. Then we have the talent development. So if they are deemed to be talented and they have the drive, then we start working on the real training and growth throughout the sport, which then ultimately, hopefully, leads to elite performance. But not in all cases, and that's fine. If we can get, again, people active for life, then I think in a lot of cases we have succeeded in our goals. When we look at that athlete development, I'll pull up a Australian example that we have. Australia works with the FTEM model. FTEM stands for Foundation, for Talent, for Elite, and Mastery. So the 4 different words there. You'll see that foundation that is given the green color takes up way more space than the blue colors, which are talent, elite, and mastery. So those 3. Very important again is that we build that foundation, that we make sure that there is physical literacy, lifelong activity, that they understand how to move, that they understand the certain first introductory formats, how does swimming work in this case, that they get an idea of how their body moves. And well, before all that, it's swimming itself, learning to swim and making sure that they can actually float and stay alive while in the water. Later on, way later on, and again, less important in my opinion, is that pathway towards talent, to elite, and to mastery, where talent is people who show that they can actually swim quite well. So they demonstrate an ability, they demonstrate their performance. And then later on, we go through elite, where they have international performances, international success. And only if they sustain that international success, we talk about mastery. Now, this is like a handhold for coaches and practitioners in sports in Australia. It's always good to be confronted or realize that how big that foundation part is, way bigger than everything in the blue area. But it's also good to understand that there is steps that every swimmer has to go through before they reach that highest level. Now, there's a couple of goals that we want to have or want to reach with that age group progression. So one, like I already said, we want to have a lifelong activity. The very important part is, as you all know, safety. So teaching kids the invaluable skill of being able to swim, which will, one, keep them healthy if they can do that, but especially keep them safe in the water. That's incredibly important. I believe that can only be done with fun. So the sessions need to be entertaining. They need to be keeping the kids into the sport and making sure that they want to come back. So one of the goals that I always have is making sure that my swimmers leave the pool with a smile on their face. And that can be simple. And just to give that a bit of a context, I work in a high performance setting. So my swimmers aim to represent Australia or New Zealand or whatever country they swim for in an international level. And we want to have them still coming out of the water, even though they train 30 hours per week in total. We still want to have them coming out of the water with a smile on their face, being ready to come back to the pool. One of the things I often do at the end of the session is a finish battle. So they actively battle, sometimes physically battle, but usually next to each other, and just see who touches the wall first. And that creates a bit of competition, but also a fun entertainment part to finish off the session. Again, making sure that they come out of the water with a bit of a smile on their face, something that they are happy with, something that they really enjoy. With all that fun, the lifelong and the safety part, come other things. And I put them a bit apart because A good big part of a good age group progression are the things that are on the other side. However, they come with their shadow effects. That's why I made them a little bit more dark. We have money because for a lot of people, me including, swimming is my job. It's what gives me money. It's what makes me pay the mortgage. So I wanna, yes, I do want to earn some money. I don't need to become rich, but I would like to earn some money to stay alive and make sure that I can live quite well. And I'm sure that's the case for a lot of you as well. So we have to think a bit about that money side. We have to think about performance because, yes, the clock still moves, and perhaps you will have parents on the background that only invest the money if the performances are there. And in some cases, in a lot of cases, also a certain amount of stature comes with the performances. Um, those are not necessarily negative things, but they can come with negative side effects. If you are only focused on money, sometimes the fun goes out of there. If you're only focused on performance, often the fun part and the lifelong aspect go out of the system. If you're same with stature. So I would like to again make a case that we are not just there for money, for performance, and for stature. We are there to create a lifelong experience for the swimmers and making sure that they are enjoying what they do. Now comes the problem. I'm a performance coach. So from now on, hopefully I made my case for lifelong and fun and entertaining. I will now start looking more through the eyes of performance coach. So my job is to deliver people at the Olympic Games in 2 years or 6 years. For that, I need certain aspects or requirements or parameters in place that lead me to have good swimmers and that those swimmers are indeed ready to perform at a certain stage. So I've looked at the training and I've been a bit diving into the different literature. And there's 4 different areas of training that I would like to discuss tonight. We have physiology, we have biomechanics, we have skill acquisition. So that's how you learn a new ability, a new way of moving. And psychology, it's how you handle your movements or your performances or your swimming mentally. Let's start with physiology. And when I look at physiology, again, like I said, I've had a look at different literature, and there's a couple of things that we need to realize when working with younger children, especially up till the age of 15, 16. Children rely almost completely on aerobic metabolism, meaning everything they do is done with oxygen, and not a lot of their stuff is done with anaerobic system, aka there will be much glycolytic glycolysis. I'm not sure of the right word in English. So they don't build up a lot of lactate. They don't build up a lot of lactic acid until they reach 16, and that system, the anaerobic system, is only completely developed until the age of 20. So this takes into very important parts of training. Everything that you see being done with higher ranking older Olympic athletes, like 50s all out, or like Cam McAvoy does, like really short sprints, but do a couple of them and see if you can get the lactate to rise. You don't have to worry about that with kids because it doesn't work. Even worse, if you start doing that at a young age, it will ruin their potential to fully develop at an older age. So our main focus when we look at metabolism should be on the aerobic system. Now, another thing that we see often going wrong is that a lot of people make the swimmers train a lot of volume, a lot of hard work, but they forget to fully develop speed. We know that if you do that later on in life, maybe not at that moment when they are younger, but later on in life when it really starts to matter at a higher level, the speed ability or the sprint ability is reduced because too much hard work too much just aerobic work and too much aerobic hard work, that their sprintability is diminished. We've got to work on speed. If you have 3 sessions per week, just saying, one of those 3, in my opinion, should be aerobic. The second one should be focused on a bit of sprint, and the third one should be purely focused on technique. Another thing that we know is, again, similar to sprint speed. If we don't do it, it will hamper their performance later in life, is strength training. But with strength training, I don't just look at doing stuff with weights. I'll talk about this a lot more later, but it's more the flexibility, the mobility, the ability to move well on land as well as in the water, and creating movement patterns and movement abilities that allow the swimmer to move well in the water. So that's what I mean with strength training. It's not weights or bench press or just squats. It's way more than that. Again, if you don't start with that relatively early, you will hamper motor performance at a later age and a later level. Alrighty. So we got, let's see, wait a second. We got these 3 points of focus. Just to summarize again, we got the aerobic capacity that we need to work on, making sure that swimmers can swim for a longer period of time without getting too tired, without losing their technique, a lot of control. We have the sprint training, making sure that they are really fast, as fast as they can be. You'll see at younger ages that swimmers can't really rate up. They can't bring a high stroke rate to bear. That's something that you can work on. That's something that you can actively coach to improve, not again for this right moment in time when they're 10, but for when they are 16, 17, 18, and later on in their life. Similar with strength training, we want to make sure that the swimmers can move well. So they need to have shoulders that can work and that can make the cyclic movements that they do over again. We want to have their groin healthy. We want to have their hips healthy. We want to have their knees healthy. And that's stuff that you can already start working on at a younger age. Now looking at some workouts, sorry Dave. When we're thinking about aerobic capacity, I've come up with a couple of examples that you might be able to use in different forms. This is again just an example, not something that I would copy directly in my program, but there might be elements that you can use from it. One of the things that we rate relatively high here in Australia is the ability to do a continuous swim. And we often train that by starting with not swimming for a certain distance, but swimming for a certain period of time. So that takes away the performance element and gives them more the focus of, all right, I need to swim continuously. And how many meters I really do does not matter that much. Examples that you could do is, for example, alternating between freestyle and IM. We also alternate between backstroke and breaststroke. We also sometimes incorporate little sparks of speed where we swim continuous, easy freestyle. And then on a signal, could be a whistle or tapping of a ladder, we go 5 strokes fast on that signal, and then they slow back down again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they go into slower and aerobic swimming again. Another way to really train up the aerobic capacity, what we often see and giving some variation, is that we do pyramids. So we go 100, 200, 300, 400, and then back 300, 200, 100. So we get a nice pyramid on both sides. You can work different things. You can add some kicking, you can add some pulling, you can change things up. But what we're looking for there is that we have that flow and that kids have some variation, creating a bit more fun. What we do, for example, is 25 backstroke, 75 freestyle, and keep doing that throughout all the different aspects of the pyramid. So you do that per 100, and then you have a nice build up. Another way to really train nice aerobic work and add a little bit of a technical component in there is to maintain the stroke count per lap. So you start with a certain stroke count and you keep doing that throughout the whole session. Some examples of sprint training. It needs to be really short, shorter than 12 seconds. That has to do with the different energy systems. We're now working on what we call the phosphocreatine system. So we're looking at 4 times 10 meters. It's not that hard, it's not that long, but if you do it really well, you get a big benefit from it as swimmer. We can do, for example, 3 rounds, 4 times 10 meters. After that, 200 really easy swim, some active recovery. You do the 10-meter sprint. And for example, the first round can be kick, second round can be pull, and the third round can be swim. Other options are to change the stroke per round or work, for example, the first round on starts, the second round on turns, and the third round on finishes. But the possibilities there are endless. There's so many ways to train that speed that you can hopefully come up with your own sets to work that. We usually give them, or we should give them, a lot of rest, usually 1 to 10 or 1 to 6 work to rest ratio. So meaning if you do 10 seconds of rest, 10 seconds of work, you have about 60 seconds of rest. And I like something that I'll talk about later on. You can work with constraints, so you can add things in that make it technically more challenging, technically more daunting. For example, we sprint quite often with tennis balls, or we sprint with pool buoy, or with fins, or with small paddles, or with the fists, or with different hand positions. You can come up with all sorts of things to add more fun, add more understanding, and create a better learning environment for your kids. Another set that we'd like to do, especially with the younger kids, to increase their speed in the turn, is something that we call a burnout. We do 5 seconds wall kicks against the wall. So you have your arms up stretched, head in the water, kick as fast as you can for 5 seconds. Again, on a signal, whistle, or tapping the letters, we go into a fast turn, and then we make the turn complete. We often do jumps from the bottom of the pool to increase their feel of kicking in a different direction. You can also do a fast finish from a dead start. And what we mean with a dead start is they go horizontal and then sprint up. Again, lots of risk. And this set that I just spoke about is more focused on skills. So learning starts, learning turns, learning the underwater phases, and learning a good finish. When we're looking at strength training, like I said before, we're not just looking at as much weight as possible. We're looking at different exercises that are often body weighted. You can do some pull-ups, you can do some push-ups, we can do some overhead squats just with a stick, for example, and you can do planks. There's plenty of exercises, but up till about age 16, I would do everything body weight, so no real extra weights on there. Other things that we do on land are skipping. We do a lot of yoga, especially with the younger kids, making sure that they move well, get more core control, and learn how to breathe as well. Pilates is part of our routines with the younger kids, and we often play games. So we play with the hacky sack. We have some basketball in there. We played dodgeball the other week. So there's different things that we do to keep the kids active on land, which are all part of our activation and strength training on land. Righty, now we're going to go a little bit more scientific. I'm very sorry about this, but it's to make a point. Hopefully you can follow. If not, I'm happy to answer questions later on. When we're looking at biomechanics, it's transferring the aerobic energy or the metabolic energy or metabolic power that we produce into the outside world. So whatever happens within our body that creates a certain amount of power, which we usually measure in watts, but it needs to be transferred. And the problem is that transfer, and that's why I went a little bit scientific here, is that transfer is very, very limited. So you can worry about your physiology all that you want. If you do not work on biomechanics or on technique, you're never going to swim fast. We know from research that the total amount of power, that's that P in over here that I've drawn, the total amount of power that you generate with your metabolic system is diminished by transferring first from within the body to the outside world. There's an efficiency component, is what we call it, that diminishes how much, or that only lets a certain amount of energy through, because a lot of the energy that we produce in the body goes to heat, goes to other processes than moving. So of all the energy that we produce in the outside, in the inside, only 10%, less than 10% often, is going to the outside world. And this is not just something that we find out. We know this from really good research. 10% is only what's going out to the outside world. So you can worry about your physiology a lot and train really hard. If you can't bring it in to the outside world, you're never going to swim fast. Now, the problem with swimming is it's not just bringing energy to the outside world, it's also transferring that energy to the water in order to move forward. Now, water has a big problem. Water moves. Unlike runners or cyclists, they push themselves off against an almost not moving world, really big object. So they're giving a little bit of what we call kinetic energy to the world, but it's only such a small amount that basically every part of their gross efficiency, of their total power that they have after bringing it into the outside world, goes into moving their body. Swimmers have something different. They move only 40% of what's being transferred to the outside world is being brought in to actively moving forward. Most of the efficiency is going towards, or most of the energy is moving the water, bringing the water into motion. So if you want to get better in swimming, again, I can't stress it enough, technique should be your main focus. So we need to teach our kids how to swim well. That has multiple benefits. If we do that well, we have a reduced level of injury. If we do that well, swimming will cost less energy, making it more enjoyable. And if we do that well, again, they will go faster. So we need to work on technique. Now, that's easier said than done. Because how do we do that? One of the things that we do to work on efficiency, or make sure that we have a higher efficiency, is a lot of stroke counting. Now, stroke counting by itself can be interesting. Just doing a couple of 50s and see if swimmers can do less and less and less strokes. But then at a certain point, it won't look like swimming anymore, and it will actually not really help their technique anymore. So we often make sure that we hold a certain time and then see if we can manipulate the stroke count, or hold a certain stroke count and then see if we can manipulate the time, make it slower or faster. One of the sets that we often do is 4 times 25, 2 times 50, and then 100. So it's, again, not that much meters. It's only 300 meters, but it teaches a valuable lesson if you do it right. So we'll start with 4 times 25, very smooth and controlled. We'll get the time with the stopwatch, let the swimmers count their strokes, and we'll do 2 50s. And those 2 50s, we double the time from the 25, and the goal is to hold the same stroke count. And you'll see that if they have gone really easy, they should be all right with the 50s. If they've gone too fast, they'll be in trouble on the 50s. So you're teaching them a lesson, not only just for technique, but also one about pacing. It gets even worse if they go too fast, because we're not only doubling the time, we're also quadrupling the time. So the times of the 25s times 4, still holding the stroke out. And that turns into a very technically challenging set where swimmers have to really control themselves. You can do this with all sorts of distances. We often go up to 200 and to 400, but that's with older kids. Usually we start learning this lesson with kids that are around 12 to 13 years of age. Another set that we often do is 4 times 25, followed by 3 cycles max distance per stroke. What that means is you do the 425s in the first round, for example, with fins, in the second round with normal swim, in the third round pull. You hold the stroke count throughout. So the stroke count from the fins, we're trying to then transfer to the pull, which is again quite challenging. And then we want to see if we can travel further with 3 strokes or 3 cycles. So we push off, do our normal underwater phase, and then go into the three cycles and see to what distance we get. So it's not necessarily a set distance that they do. No, we're trying to improve that distance without being fussy about are they making a 25 or a 50. By doing that, working on the distance, you can make this into a nice game. Can you go further than where you were in the previous round? If we do, we know that you are swimming better. If you can do it within the same time, even better, because then we also know that you're faster. So you can add elements to this one and create a way more interesting game and a way more interesting experience, something that they will enjoy, come out of the water smiling and making sure that they come back to your program for the next session. Teaching skills or teaching how to do a good technique is very difficult and very challenging for coaches, but also very interesting for coaches. You can really get creative with this stuff. We are looking at how we can improve technique, how we make swimmers move in a different way, and I often use 3 different ways of doing so. We work with a constraints-led approach. I think Andrew Schaaf is presenting for the US CCS in a bit as well, correct? Is that correct? That Andrew Schaaf is presenting in a bit more?
Yeah, Andrew was here a bunch of times. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to him before, make sure that you do, or read his book, because it's tremendously interesting, and it's one of the ways that we work with quite a bit as well. The constraints-led approach. I will talk a little bit about it. Another way that we do, and it's very closely related to that, is differential learning. And we often use a video camera for our training sessions to improve skills. How that looks, or what that looks like, is a very good example, I think, of a bit of differential learning and constraints-led, is the example set that I have there. What we're teaching swimmers to do is not to hold their hands in a certain angle and make sure that they move exactly in that way. We're teaching them to find their correct solution, their optimal solution. So we've got to bring the swimmers in a position where they can filter out or find that solution, understand how their body moves, and find the best solution to solve with certain problem. A very good set. This is one that we do with the younger kids, but it's coming from the book of Andrew Schaaf, is one where we do a bit of a pull set in this case. We do 450s alternating with 250s. And throughout that set, we use different gears and you use different materials, and we use that different material in different ways. So we start by using pedals, not fast. We're just looking at reducing the stroke count to 50. Then we start swimming with only 1 pedal, and we'll see if we can still go less strokes in the second one. Then in the first one, we'll switch sides of the hands where the pedal is after the first 50. Then we go normal hands, so no pedals. And we want to see if then still with a reduced surface area of the hand, we can get to the stroke counts we did before with the pedals. Then we'll reduce the surface area even more and go and swim with 1 tennis ball. So we have 1 tennis ball in your hand. You can also do that by swimming with the fists. You can also work with different hand positions to reduce the surface area. And again, we're looking at maintaining stroke count or even getting less strokes in. Now we finish up with 2 tennis balls. So it's getting really challenging to still hold that stroke length because you have less water to move or less propelling areas to hold against the water, push against the water, still aiming to reduce the stroke count. So very challenging technical set. But I'm not telling swimmers, or we're not telling swimmers how to move. We're giving them different tools with which they can discover how they should move. I like this way of working quite a lot, and we do this a big amount of our time is spent doing different drills, doing different exercises that challenges the body and challenge the swimmers. Another way that we do or we work is do a 25 on the video. Usually we pick up 1 point, and 1 point is all they need, because if you give them more information, they often can't register or can't transfer that into good movement. Their mind is just too full of stuff that they can't move well anymore. After the 25, we then give them free time or free distance, 4 times 25, to improve. And often I let the swimmers figure that out themselves. So what I'll do is I'll do the video, I'll do the discussion about the video, then let them do 4 25s, then get them into the next round. What that creates is that I can handle quite a big number of swimmers in a short amount of time. So I used to coach in a smaller club environment. I'll talk about that again a bit later. And there we used to get about 30 to 40 swimmers done in a 2-hour session. All right. Another thing that we need to be aware of is psychology, or how they can deal with different aspects of swimming. A very familiar one is that pressure is always a big thing. And we need to start learning kids at a younger age already to deal with pressure. It's fine if they feel it's making them understand that it's not a problem to feel. We learn from our errors. We learn from our mistakes. So we need to provide some of those mistakes. At the same time, they need to be an understanding that there is something that is called too little arousal, too much arousal, so being too relaxed from all the way to too stressed. And there's an optimum, a bigger amount of space in the top where they can reach their peak performance. And that's something they need to learn. So we, again, need to make sure that they have an idea of how that works. Different exercises that we do is, for example, get out swim, putting a lot of pressure on that one single swim that they have to do in training. If they reach within a certain time from their PB, then they can get out. And we usually do that as a group. It's usually more towards the end of the session. But if you, by that doing that, finish the session 10 minutes earlier, and you teach them how to deal with pressure, it's usually a really good way to get them to deal with pressure. We also teach them stuff that they can use to handle the pressure. For example, we do 3 times 50 with plenty of rest, no special prep before the first one. The second, we work on breath control exercises, learning how to relax the body by using breathing. And the third one, we do visualization exercises. That's actually one that increases the arousal. We then just do a 50 and see how they swim while we have done no prep, breath control exercises, or the visualization exercise. Another way to bring them out of their normal balance is to do a surprise 100 after a big set. And that's something that I still do after a big sets. Tomorrow afternoon, some of my swimmers will have a number of 50s where they have to go all out. And right after they've done the last one, they don't know that yet, they have to do 100 meters as fast as possible. So doing things that challenge them mentally will help in building better age group swimmers and leading them to a good level at a senior level. Alrighty, I spoke a lot of things about how we need to train or what we need to focus on. Now I'll talk a little bit about the longitudinal build-up. And this is an important one because I see in a lot of cases in Australia, in Germany, I've seen it. In the US, I've seen it. I've seen it in Southern Europe. I've seen it here in Thailand. I know from Malaysia that it happens there, that a lot of kids work too hard at a young age. And we want to have, like I said in the start, a gradual step-by-step approach in how we progress the swimmers throughout the different age groups. The German example, I was able to draw that up, and I think it's a pretty good one. We'll see that there's different categories. They put their swimmers into different age groups. 7 to 10 years, we focus on learning skills. 11 to 12, we get a little bit more volume, but still focus majority on technique. 13, 14, usually they add one double session per week, so a morning and an afternoon session, and some more endurance work takes place. That's what I've been talking about, that aerobic capacity work. And then from the age of 15, 16, that's when they usually start more towards a bit of specialization. Germany is relatively early with that. Other countries tend to do that a little bit later, but it's definitely a way of working. A really horrible table, again, the German one, gives a bit of an idea of how much water and how many sessions they do in the different age groups. So from that first age, 7 to 8, they usually have normally 3 water sessions per week and 2 land sessions, leading to about a total of 4 hours per week in total. And then gradually this pool builds up. You'll see 4 to 5 sessions for 9 to 10-year-olds, about 6 sessions for 11 to 12-year-olds, about 7 sessions for 13, 14-year-olds, and gradually everything builds up. And you'll see also that there is a big portion of land exercises. So 4 out of 10, almost a quarter when they are 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. Still 1/4 of all their training that they do is focused more on land than in the water. You'll see also the specialization here at a bit older age. They give us a bit more percentages on how much is focused on technique, how much is focused on speed, and how much on endurance. And you'll see at the youngest ages that there's hardly any endurance work and definitely no anaerobic work. The anaerobic work starts here with the 15 to 16-year-olds when they start going into the sprint work, and you'll see a bit of aerobic and anaerobic mix when they go in the middle distance work, and that starts at the age of 16. So before that, it's first all technique, bit of sprint, then later on technique, slowly moving to some more endurance work, and gradually that builds up. They go very carefully in how they add everything. Technique is, again, the most important factor. This is a bit of an indicator of how much volume they do, about 5 kilometers going to 10 kilometers, and you'll see a linear movement going up through the ages. And we want to keep that linear movement going on for quite a while. So it only flattens off when they reach about 20 years of age. Sprinters doing less than middle distance, and the middle distance group doing less than longer distance, but we only start worrying about that when they are a little bit older. Now, finally, I have some examples of how the age group programs are set up and how kids move through that one. I'm just waiting for my slides to pop up. There we go. In Australia, I've worked with 2 different clubs. I came in and started working at a very small club. So I came from a high performance center, then moved into a small club with only 30 swimmers, the Cairns Stingrays. And then later on in my current role, I work a lot with New Swim, which is the feeder program into my higher performance program. For the Stingrays, we set it up as follows. We had a couple of goals. We had the goal to get as many kids in swimming as we can. Again, making sure that a lot of people can experience and enjoy the noble art of swimming, which is also good for business. So we wanted to have a situation where they felt safe, fun, and where they were seen, which was good for our business in that we had more kids in. The other thing where we are working towards, or what we were working towards, was to produce swimmers of international Olympic standard. I must admit, I moved before we got to that level. However, we did have one swimmer making an international team for New Zealand on a senior level. So we were getting close in a small club environment. And what is interesting, we had a big growth of our swimmers. So business went well. Within a fun environment where a lot of people wanted to come in, we went from 30 swimmers per month per session to 110 swimmers. And that meant that we had to restructure our program. When I started, there were only three different programs, three different squads. And when I finished, we had 6 different squads. So you'll see here, we had our stroke development or technique in the mini squad, age 6 to 8, with 2 to 3 sessions per week. The skate squad was still focused on development, stroke development, and they can start to compete in Australia. That starts at age 8. So before that, no competing really. 8 to 11, that's where we were focusing on with that group, 2 to 4 sessions per week. So you can gradually see that build up. One thing we added was our fitness squad. Anyone who did not want to compete necessarily or did not know if they wanted to compete and just want to swim, we had a group from them. So after the development stages, we had 2 trajectories, one in the non-competitive and one in the competitive. In the non-competitive, it's their choice how many they can swim. We just want to have them enjoy what they're doing, stay healthy, and have their lifelong fun of lifelong activity, health benefits, and everything that comes with it. 3 more senior squads from 11 to 14. We had a junior squad and competitive, 3 to 6 sessions per week. And then we had more towards state championships in Australia. That's already a really high level. Had to train about 4 to 6 times with 2 gym sessions. And then we went to the national development squad where there is a more 16 and over age group. I usually had an individual program for each swimmer. So this club went from really small to quite big for Cairns, for the city in the north of Australia. It was by far the biggest program at the end, but we started really small. Again, the goal was to get a lot of kids in and let them return and enjoy what we were doing. I then moved to Newcastle, where I'm currently working. Newcastle was already quite a big club. We started when I started, there were about 200 swimmers. And this was more a club with a different goal, with a goal more of building a pathway for all swimmers of all abilities. And the club had a clear performance goal to become the best country club in New South Wales, which we have been for the last 3 years. We had a tremendous increase there from 200 to 450 swimmers in one pool. So it's very busy, but it's also good for business. And the way that we have structured it now, we're able to cater for everyone who wants to just swim for fitness, which is the Youth Plus, Youth 8 Plus, and the Youth 12 Plus squad, all the way up to trials, Australian trials, and international competition, which is my target group. So again, here you can see a very gradual build up in the non-competitive squad. They only have to show up once a week, but they can come in 6 or maybe even 8 times per week if they really want. In all the other groups, we have more strict criteria of how often they can come in. So the development groups, 2 to 3 sessions or 2 to 4 sessions from age 7 to 10, and 3 to 5 from age 9 to 12, 4 to 6 for the 13 plus in the state group, and 5 to 7 when they work towards nationals, or even a little bit more than 7. How they move up, it's determined by age, as you can see, but also by their ability. How good can they swim? How often do they show up to training? And very important, their maturity or their attitude within the session. So We have a very strict lineup and a gradual build-up of all the different squads. And gradually, we want to have them move through the different squads, getting more and more towards the higher level. But at the same time, we're providing a situation where everyone can swim, where we have everyone enjoying the sport and coming back with a lot of fun and enjoyment of the sport, aiming to get them into long-term athlete development. All righty. That was, I think, a lot of information. If you want to have some questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you want to get in touch, my contact details are here. There's my email address. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, and also on Instagram. I'm happy to answer any questions, and if there's any comments, I'd love to hear them, of course.
Hey, Coach,
Okay.
this is Mark. Hey, Dennis, I have a few questions. Could you tell us about the breathing exercises? So that you're going to do 350s, and before the second 50, you might do on deck breathing exercises. Could you give us a couple examples of that?
Yes. So first thing is important to realize that the heart rate is directly related to the breathing. So when we speed up our breathing, we can increase the heart rate. When we slow down our breathing, we can reduce the heart rate. And when our heart rate is low, we get into a bit more relaxed state. So we use the tempo of our breathing to dictate our heart rate. Often when people feel nervous, or swimmers feel nervous, they notice that they don't have any control of the heart rate. They sometimes have mind chatter. And by focusing on the breathing, we can reduce the heart rate and take some of the mind chatter away. What we do, there's a couple of things. We breathe in quite short but deep, and then breathe out really, 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 really slow. That's where we usually start with younger kids. We then progress by focusing on different forms of breathing. You can have abdominal breathing with your abs or with your belly. You can have chest breathing. We find that more abdominal breathing is better for relaxation. So we want to have their hands on their belly, and then we breathe in as deeply as possible, and then we breathe out as deeply as possible. And doing that very controlled and with a lot of thought often leads to the swimmers having more control over their heart rate. If you want to get even more, we'll give them a certain amount of time to breathe in, for example, 5 seconds, and then give them 10 seconds to breathe out. That then often transfers into something we call box breathing. And box breathing is something that has been done by US military. It's made very popular, especially by US military. And what you do with box breathing, and this is where the box idea comes from, is you breathe in for a certain amount of time. Let's see if I can do this. Breathe in for a certain amount of time. You hold your breath for a certain amount of time. You breathe out for a certain amount of time. You hold your breath for a certain amount of time. And then you breathe in again for a certain amount of time. And that way, keep on going. Now, if you do that, you can really control your heart rate. And because you're thinking about the breathing, relax all the mind chatter and make sure that you're getting into a really nice and calm state. If you want to practice breath control, this is a really good way and a safe way to practice breath control outside of the pool. So apart from the psychological benefit, it also has a bit more of a physiological benefit where we practice breathing outside of the pool. So you have less risk of drowning, you have less risk of shallow water drowning, and you can do that on any point of the day in any situation. But we like to combine it then with swimming to see how it transfers from land into the water.
So you have non-competitive groups. Tell us how that works. Do they do test sets? Do they do house leagues? Do the kids generally morph into the becoming more competitive? What's the framework with that?
All right, that's an interesting one because, to be honest, Mark, I always struggle with understanding kids who do not want to compete. So for me as a performance coach, that is sometimes hard to understand. What we're looking there is to keep them active. So often they do not want to compete because there is already too much pressure from school, um, from their parents sometimes, from other sports or from music. And so what they want to have in the swimming, surprisingly, is just normal swimming. So we teach them as best as we can, and we almost do our normal stuff that we do with our competitive swimmers. So yes, there are some test sets. Yes, there is sprinting. Yes, there are some competitive elements in there. Because from a performance perspective, we try to get them happier and enjoying the sport, and perhaps they then transfer into competitive swimming. But the main goal there is to keep them healthy or make sure that they become more healthy and enjoy the sport. So different things are done. We do some games with them. We have some competitive stuff with them. But we see per year, we have about 150 non-competitive swimmers. And per year, we see about 10, maybe 20 transferring into competitive swimming. But it's something that we are still growing and that we just started. Before, there was no spot for kids who just wanted to do some laps and be healthy and be fit. Yeah, we've seen that there's a big market for it. So it's both the business side of things and providing this lifelong opportunity.
Tell us about your coaching staff. Who are those people? How long have they been with you? How do you
Well,
get hired?
one has been with me now for 25 years because my wife is the head coach of the new swim program. I am just there for the high performance program, but my whole philosophy trickles through gradually throughout the whole program. So I have myself and my wife as the head coach, who I've been working with for a long, long time, both because we're married and also in a bit more the swimming environment. My wife used to be one of the assistant coaches of Jacco Verhaeren, which is the famous coach from the Netherlands who used to coach Pieter van den Hoegenband and Inge de Bruin and Ranomi Kromo Jojo. So my wife has been into competitive swimming for a long time as well. She's the head coach. She has two assistant coaches. One of them is Tim Arthur Newman. He's a great kid and comes from, sorry, I want to call it footy, but no one will understand that. He comes from rugby, so Australian rugby, not Australian football, but Australian rugby. He's great with younger kids, has a real good idea of how to teach different skills. What did I call it? The exercise for the skills, the burnouts. That it's his idea. So he's very creative in coming up with new ways of working. We also have a third full-time coach, so a fourth full-time coach, I should say, which is Matt Wilson. Matt is a former Olympian and former world record holder on the 200-meter breaststroke. He joined our program about a year ago, I would say, or half a year ago. He's now doing the state development squad in our pool. And then we have a bunch of assistant coaches or part-time coaches. We have Bridget, we have Amy, and we have Bryn. And then one of my swimmers, Jack Handy, who is also an international swimmer for New Zealand. He guides the training on land, so the gym program. So there's 8 coaches in total. And underneath that, there is a full on Learn to Swim program with about 2,000 swimmers per week coming through the doors.
Well, fabulous. So tell us a little bit about your consulting business. What's your ideal clients and what are some of your successes there?
Well, I have been asked a while ago by a really famous influencer, but also really smart businessman. His name is Mitchell Brown. that swim coach Mitch. He puts up a lot of very interesting videos up on YouTube, but he was running into his limits, and there's a certain amount of education that coaches get from their normal national federation. So swimming in Australia, you used to have 4 different tiers of swim coach accreditation and learning and study. But a lot of coaches feel that they are limited with what they learn. So what I offer is weekly or monthly or whatever fits the coach sessions one-on-one with me, where I discuss and help them with my background as a sports scientist and as a long-time coach within the sport of swimming. We discuss everything from biomechanics to physiology to psychology, but also how to deal with parents, how to deal with different stakeholders within a company or within a business. So I usually help out coaches if they're interested.
Fabulous. My last question, the others can jump in after this. You used some technology toys in the past. We saw them on videos and such. What's your latest toys at the pool?
Well, my latest toy, I don't have it with me, unfortunately, because I use a hand sensor. It's called the EOS Swim Beta, developed by a company in Australia, which is a hand sensor. A little puck goes on the hand, and it measures the pressure on the hand, but it also measures where the hand moves through the water. So we get a way more in-depth analysis of how the hand moves through the water. And that allows us to look at swimming in ways that we've never looked at it. Because yes, we can see the video data. We know how the hand moves, but we don't know how much force there is on the hand. And with this new tool, we can actually get an indication of that. We can also see what movements lead to lesser force. At the same time, I'm still active in research, Mark. And we're at the moment with the University of Newcastle opening up a PhD project. So I'll be supervising a PhD.
Your wife is there in Thailand?
No, she's not. No, she's at home coaching.
Oh,
Unfortunately.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. We have
No, so
Bangladesh, we have Kenya, we have
awesome.
Pakistan, Bangladesh, Kenya, Pakistan, and Timor-Leste is here, okay, and Thailand is here, okay.
Beautiful.
Thailand, Leo Alianza, Coach Sander is in Thailand. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions, guys? Any more questions? And we do have a question coming from Philip Nuwa Gaba. Okay, the floor is yours.
I'm from Uganda, sir.
Uganda,
wow.
Uganda. Okay, good.
So what I was trying to inquire was that I was still explaining to you, like introducing myself. I'm a national swimmer from Uganda, university swim as well. So I'm looking into engaging myself in coaching. So this session is really important to me. Yeah, my inquiry is what strategies, like what competition structure is best supports long-term development in age group swimmers?
Alrighty, that's a good question.
Yeah.
If I understood correctly, you're asking what would be a preferred competition structure. There's quite a lot of debate around there. In the Netherlands at the moment, there is no more times, no more disqualifications, no more medals until the age of 12.
Okay.
There's a lot of debate about that. A lot of Olympic swimmers are not happy with that. They see it as a negative development. I don't know what the best one is. What I do know is that often it's better to start with, in my opinion, with more 100 meters, because a lot of swimmers in Australia start only with 50 meters, and that leads to swimmers when they are at the end of their career never having swum a 200 fly or a 1500 freestyle or a 400 IM. And in my opinion, that's wrong, because if you have never swum an event, how can you know that that's not your best event? So you have to create a situation where at a certain age, they have done all the events. In my opinion, when they are younger, they need to swim all the 400 meters and a 200 IM. So at about age 10 to 12, that's when that should happen. You don't need any longer events, maybe in 400 free, but I wouldn't go into 200 fly, 200 breaststroke, and 200 back until they at about age 12. And age 12, that's when I would open them up to multiple events and basically the whole swimming calendar. In Germany, they have been doing from a long time back to doing like what they call swimming pentathlon or a heptathlon. And they were testing 100 meters of kick, 100 meters of pool, 200 meters IM. So they took away a lot of the competitive elements. I think it's very important that there is not too much pressure at a younger age. I think you need to allow for events that align with the amount of training that I've just spoke about. So I would say, all right, having competitions is great. I think that's part of the sport. I think there should be times, in my opinion, they should get disqualified or at least told what they are doing wrong so they can learn from that. But I would stay within a limited amount of events for a younger age and then gradually build that up over older age. Is that answering your question, Philip?
Yeah, it is. I also had, so thank you so much for your great answer. I also maybe like, can I ask you one more question? It would be like my last question.
That's fine, mate.
Yeah. What are those mistakes that you think coach usually do when dealing with these age group swimmers, and these mistakes later affect these age group swimmers later in life, in their swimming career?
Could you ask that fresh question again, because you just dropped out when you asked your question?
Okay, what I'm meaning is that what are those common mistakes that coaches make that coaches make to these age group swimmers, and they affect them later in their swimming career?
Well, one of the things that I see often is kids being trained too hard with too much pressure. So coaches, unfortunately, in a lot of countries, their funding or their money is related to how good their swimmers are. That's one of the things that I, for example, see in Malaysia, and that are sometimes not really beneficial for long-term progression. I don't want to talk too bad about Malaysia at all, because I know wonderful coaches there. Good friend of mine, David, is in Miri Miri. I know Mark from Kuala Lumpur. But you often see that they are really good swimmers at age 13 to 14, and then they don't progress up to an older age. And that's a shame, because that means that they are not progressing. Most likely they dropped out of the sport. They don't get out of their career what they should get. So training too hard is one of the things. And I think a lot of coaches are still coaching in an old way of working, being too much above the swimmer and being shouting towards the swimmers and forgetting about technique and forgetting about health. So I reckon we need to be smarter. We need to work smarter. We need to communicate better. I think the common mistakes again are working too hard, working the swimmers too hard, not communicating well with the swimmers, and not creating a safe and fun environment.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Philip. The question is, what are our core values as a coach, and how do we model them for athletes? That is something that is quite a bit individual. In my opinion, like I said before, very important is that we create a safe environment where kids want to be in, and where they want to be in for a long period of time, and where they have fun. I think understanding that is a very important aspect. There are other things that come more into play when you think about your own philosophy. I think the fun, the safe environment should be there in all cases. And that's something that you as a coach should model. So when you are on deck, you are not just you, you're also in your role. So you have to almost act as if you are really enjoying yourself, and hopefully you are. But that's something that I think is very important, that you show how awesome this sport can be. So as a coach, you lead by example. And that's how I would model them for my athletes. It's in my case, I work often with 3 different pillars. I want to have courage. I want to have a positive attitude, and I want to have what I call Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an African philosophy. Look it up. It's really cool. But I talk about that with my swimmers, and I communicate with my swimmers. So leading by example, once you have figured out what your exact core values are, apart from the fun and safe environment, you should lead by example and tell your swimmers about it and inform your swimmers about it. And also, very often forgotten, listen to your swimmers. So it's all about communication and the right communication. Hopefully, Mobina, that answers your question. I also see a question by Eric. When and how old will swimmers need to be to lift weights? Very closely, again, related to maturity and aging up. We often start at age 15 to 16. So right around where that age starts, where they start to develop a bit more of an anaerobic system, that's often when we see where we get good effects of lifting weights without hampering their maturity and their development and their aging process. Age 15 to 16 is my recommendation, Philip. I also see a question from Jeremy. Is it also okay to switch the load of exercises, like 70% land and 25 water, then next session switch up again to 25% and 75% water? Yes, well, Jeremy, what I mean with 75% land and 25% water, it's the total load within the week. So if you have 4 sessions, 4 times an hour, I would have 1 session would be on land. But you can have that on a Monday, you can have that on the Tuesday, you can have that wherever in the week. Or if you have 4 swim sessions, I usually recommend 15 minutes before each session. So you'll have 45 minutes of swimming, but preceded by 15 minutes of yoga, breathing exercises, gym, whatever you can do to get them moving well. So it's not static. So yes, you can definitely switch up the load of the exercises. Hopefully that answers your question. Mark, I see your question there about virtual events and what would be creative events to do among our audience. I haven't really participated in virtual events. We've done a couple. That was racing different countries and different clubs. That was especially when the pandemic was raging around the world. We did some events. Queensland was where I was working at the time, in the north of Australia, was relatively quickly opened, and we were racing between different clubs and loading up our results and having the different clubs streaming on different screens. So we'll have one race in one pool, screened towards, or screen towards the other side, towards the other club. On a big screen, they could see our results, and then they would swim against us and see where they would end up. And that way, we basically went like a pinball machine back and forth, alternating the order every now and then. So we never always had the same benefit of being first or being second. And that way we had a virtual events running. It's being popularized now in Australia, and we work more with events where swimmers are uploading their results and everyone swims at the same time. I think when we're looking at creative events, yes, virtual events can be really interesting. I also think the ability to share ideas is a very good one, as we are doing right now. But I can also imagine that, giving or the opportunity to contact people online via different social media can be very interesting. Creative events, we have been looking at different ways of working in kick. We've been doing butterfly kick on the back. We've been going for 75s. So we have done different events where swimmers are not racing their normal swimming events. So that helps in being creative and doing something different and making it more fun. Mobina has another question. Mental techniques are most effective for managing anxiety in high stakes races. Well, the first one I would start with 100% is the breathing exercises I spoke about earlier. Being able to control your breathing will help in reducing the anxiety. Training under pressure is an important one, teaching the swimmers to deal with the pressure. I give a bit of an example for that. Another set that we do is, for example, we have 650s. If they are within a certain bandwidth, it stays 650s. If they go faster than that bandwidth, for example, faster than 5% of their PB, then they drop a 50. So instead of 650s, we do only 550s. If they go more than or slower than 10% of their PB, they add a 50. So instead of 650s, it turns into 750s. So there comes a pressure element with their training, and that helps in preparing them for dealing with more anxiety. A very important thing that helps my swimmers is that they realize that nerves are actually completely normal and that everyone has them. Nerves are a sign that they want to do good. So discussing that with swimmers can be very worthwhile. And the last thing that I've done with one of my swimmers, which has weirdly worked, I'll talk about two things, but one thing that really worked well with one of my swimmers is that he used to think he needed to be aggressive or angry or really focused before a race. And what we've done is we started smiling before a race. So in the beginning, he looked a bit scary, almost like the Joker from Batman, with his face a bit like this. But gradually, he got better at that, and he now smiles before a race and really enjoys racing again, and has shown a big improvement, actually. What I used to do with a lot of my swimmers, and what some of my swimmers also do, is to have a look at the grandstand. And that might sound weird, but if you look at the grandstand, you will always guaranteed pick up something that is funny. Person dressed weird, something eating a booger from their nose, someone eating KFC on the grandstand. There's always something funny happening for one reason or the other, because even the parents and everyone in the grandstands, they are usually normal people, and normal people do weird things. So when you look at that, it takes your mind. So when you search for that, it takes your mind off the racing, and it actually often creates a moment where you can smile and relax a little bit. So it's not easy, definitely not. If it was easy, everyone would be able to do it. But I recommend the breathing techniques. I recommend prepping for pressure or training under pressure. Other things is talking about it with your swimmers. And then there's these little things that can take their minds off their anxiety, like smiling before a race, dancing before a race. You see that often nowadays as well, or looking at the grandstand for these weird things that happen every now and then. That can definitely help with managing anxiety. Yes, that is something that Phelps has said. Train every day of the year. Yeah.
What can you say about that in the elite level, or the high performance level? What can you say about that? Which is you're talking about a, a straight schedule of a year without any excuses. Even I think most probably he's mentioning instead of 365 days, he can only excuse himself on Christmas, New Year, and birthday. What can
Yeah,
you say about that?
I strongly believe in that we need to train, yes, but our main goal with training is that we adapt and we get better. So we train hard, we work hard, and again and again and again. But the main goal always is that we want to get better. So not just training, but adaptation is our main focus. And for adaptation to occur, we also need recovery. And for recovery, you don't need to train, you actually need to recover. And often is that side of the medal, that part of the training process forgotten. So I do not completely agree. There's very different things. I think there is a minimum amount that you need to train per year, which is about 46 to 48 weeks in my experience. But we also see that swimmers can very much benefit by taking some time off, especially when they're in that age group situation where all their friends are hanging out and they can't hang out. Giving them a bit of time to hang out with their friends, to enjoy holidays with their family, I think is very healthy and very normal. So, yes, I know what Phelps said about that, but I've had the luxury of working with very good athletes in the world, and most of them do take some time off every year to recover, re-energize, and get ready for training again. When they are training, though, in those 48 or 46 weeks per year, there is indeed no excuse. So, partying, drinking alcohol, eating bad food, those are things that at a certain level you can't afford yourself anymore.
Here's your look tonight, Sander. You can send that to your wife back home.
Wow, nice one.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Thanks
Coach,
for being here.
we don't have the right words to say thank you, and we would like to. I'll try to send you to your email the certificate of okay, let's take a picture. Open your windows, guys, and let's call it a night after this.
If you find this interesting, I want you to like and subscribe this station and join us on Saturdays. Then you can ask your questions as well. All the details are posted at wasu.org. Hope to see you on the pool deck or online soon.